Okay, so I was going to talk about what happened to me, what has happened to me since losing my job, my career. I just thought I'd do a couple of funny things. I meant to mention them yesterday, actually. They were appropriate yesterday. I forgot to do it. A couple of funny things that happened. I said about the last employment tribunal we went to, where the school had said put lots of suggestions for jobs for me that I should have been applying for. And one of them that particularly amused me was there was a job advertised, and it was, oh, why didn't he apply for this? It was only 15, 16 miles from where he lived, and, job as a technology teacher. And it was sort of there, South End, 15 or 16 miles away, which it is by boat. It's about 2 hours drive. So that, I thought that was quite amusing. So they obviously didn't particularly look too carefully at their bundle submission. The other thing was, I mentioned about the last judge I saw in London at the Employment Appeal Tribunal. I can't remember the guy's name now. I think he went on to become Lord something. I don't know. I know he was quite a big noise. And it was one of the last things he said to me. I said there was just the three of us in the room when this was all going on, in the courtroom. And bearing in mind that I had lost a career that I loved, and I'd been unemployed, or I hadn't, 5 years before that I'd lost my job. So I'd lost over £100,000 in wages, and I'd had £150,000 knocked off my value of my pension pot, and all sorts of people that I thought were my friends had turned against me, and that I was doing a 0 hours minimum wage job. And he said, you need to move on. you need to get over it. You need to move on. To what? Anyway, I thought those were quite funny. Anyway, back to the story. When I first was sacked, I thought I'd go down to the job centre, sign on, because obviously I was worried about my stamp and things like that. And after a few weeks, I hadn't had any unemployment benefit. So I went down and queried this, and they said, oh, you're not entitled to it. So I said, well, what are you talking about? I've been paying in since I was 17 and a half, 18. 40 years I've paid into this. What do you mean I'm not entitled to it? And they said, we've got a document from the school, and they said that you were sacked for misconduct. So you're not entitled to unemployment benefit. So that was quite good. So there I was, without a job. Maggie were working 2 days a week. Chloe just gone to university, and I still had a few payments to make on my mortgage. Luckily, it was coming to an end quite soon. So that was a little bit of a shock. When you sign on unemployment, in order to get your stamp paid these days, you have to apply for. You have to demonstrate you've applied for at least 2 jobs per week. Now, obviously, I would have done that anyway, but finding 2 teaching jobs suitable for me per week would obviously be really difficult because it's quite specialist. And I think I probably realised it was going to be a bit of a struggle for me to get a teaching job anyway. So over the course of the next year and a half, I applied for dozens of teaching jobs, and I applied for hundreds, literally hundreds of other jobs. And these were all sorts of things, mainly unskilled stuff. I can remember there was washing up in a restaurant in Whitstable and working in a artisan bakery or something. And I was just getting nothing because, obviously my CV wasn't suitable for these things. In fact, the bakery, I rang up to apply for the job, and the woman actually said, you're too old to do it. You're 57 or whatever it is, 58. You'll never get up in the morning. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. Anyway, I was applying for all these jobs. I didn't get anything from the teaching jobs until one day I heard from, it was called the Marlow Academy, and it was down in Broadstairs. And I'd heard of the Marlow Academy because a few months before it had been on the Southern News, and it was the worst school in the country apparently from the point of view of discipline and value added and exam results and stuff like that. Anyway, I applied for a job as it was a photography teacher of photography. Anyway, I went down to this place and there was a few of us there, and we had to do a lesson with a class of kids. When we came back to the place was like a zoo, I have to say. There were kids running around everywhere. And when we got back to the common area where we met, some of the teachers that had been for this interview were in tears. They said it was just a disaster. It was pretty appalling. Mine went all right. I had quite a good motivated group, and the lesson went really well. And I was happy. The head of art, because it was an art job, was quite happy with me, and I'd taken my laptop down and done a little PowerPointy thing. Anyway, obviously when it came to, because the interview process is often done by managers and things now, not head teachers and people like that. And of course this person said, why did you leave, in October for your last job? And I used to carry a piece of paper with the front page from the judgment on it, which said I'd been unfairly and wrongfully dismissed, blah, blah, blah. And that was the end of it. Didn't hear any more from that. So that was a bit galling. And the only other interview I had was for the job of a technology technician at Maidstone Grammar School for Girls, which was quite a long drive away. Anyway, I went over there, and it was for £15,000 a year or something, but I was desperate. I was desperate to do something. I hadn't had any employment. I was just banging my head on the wall. Anyway, I went over there, and I did the interview, and we had to identify tools and say what we used them for and talk about safety. And then we had to spend, it was quite a long time actually. I think it was about 40 minutes or something in a class talking to pupils. And obviously I was in my element. I was talking to these girls who were just coming up with ideas for projects, and I was telling them, have you tried this and tried that? And it went really well. And again, I was wheeled off to I don't know what they're called now, some sort of manager, I can't remember. And the same thing happened, why did you leave your last job? Why haven't we got a reference from them? And I explained it, and that was that. So that they could have had a technology teacher with 30 years experience working as a technician for £15,000 a year. Anyway, I realised this wasn't going to go anywhere. I just didn't know. I was at my wit's end. And then I saw an advert. What was it? It was tutors in graphics required, or lecturers in graphics required. And I applied for this thing. Phone this number or apply here or something. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it turns out I was working in a prison, a young offenders institution, Borstal, the original. Well, I went for the interviews for this agency. Again, it was an agency in London. We're doing this, NXG they were called. And this sharp-suited guy interviewed me, and I had to do a demonstration lesson to him what I would do. And then there were quite a few tutors actually taken on. I think there were about 14 or 15 of us. And we had to go to Rochester Prison, to Borstal for an induction, which told you about security and do's and don'ts and key safety and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you didn't actually get a trial lesson in there, obviously. Anyway, I forget what the qualification was. Can't know what it's called now. Anyway, it was level 3 or level 1 graphic design or something. and I'd have classes of about 8 or 9 or something like that. There was no equipment at all, so I had to order loads of equipment in, which obviously the agency paid for. And then I started there, and to say it was a difficult job is probably an understatement. It was really, really challenging, as you can probably imagine. So these were 18 to 23-year-olds or something, and they were, criminals. There were quite a few in there from the riots, which had just happened, and there were all sorts of other types there. To give you an idea, I think I'd say 14 of us started. At the end of the first week, I think it was down to 6. And at the end of the second week, it was down to 4, just 4 of us. 4 of us were left. Anyway, it was incredibly, incredibly challenging. And when people ask me, I always say that I crushed these guys with my enthusiasm. And I broke the lesson up and I tried to make it interesting. And it was 2.5 hour, 3-hour sessions. Well, I mean, you don't even have that with A level. Anyway, I found I made my way through it. I mean, I could do another 10 of these presentations on my life in that prison. I can remember one particular thing I was so pleased about. There was a lad, and he obviously he was quite a clever lad. I mean, most of them were in there for drug dealing or some sort of violence associated with it or whatever. And this lad, I mean, I was there for a year and a half. This lad had an interview, and he was accepted on a degree course for graphics at Canterbury College. Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the first few months of his course, he was still in prison, and he had to travel down. They took him down to the station every morning. He travelled down every day to start his course. So I think that was probably the highlight, but there were all sorts of other things. Very, very unpleasant place to work. Now, over the course of the time I was there, about a year and a half, the character of the place gradually changed because they were putting more and more adult prisoners in there. They wanted to change it from a young offenders institution into I think it was a Cat C prison, Category C prison. So they'd open new wings, there were more adults. I was getting more adults onto the course, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds on the course as well. And then, because they wanted to turn it into a working prison, and basically what happened is that the agency I worked for, who worked for Manchester College, who were in charge of doing the education in prisons, well, they lost their contract. So that was it. So I was out of work again, back to stage 1. And I don't remember how long I was out of work a second time. Same sort of thing, I went and signed on. In fact, it was such a waste of time signing on, complete waste of time. I mean, my national insurance was fully paid up. I don't know, I suppose it was just I needed something to do, felt like I was taking some sort of steps. Anyway, again, I managed to see something in the paper. It was about ambulance drivers required at Canterbury Hospital. And I applied for that, and that turned out to be working for a driving agency. And they were just interested in getting people in. They weren't particularly worried about background things. Obviously, we had to have CRB checks, which wasn't a problem. But they weren't interested in my employment history particularly. So we were trained to use ambulances. It was patient transport. It wasn't blue light stuff, obviously. It was moving patients to and from between hospitals and from their homes and things, and in for appointments. So I started doing that. Again, I was working for the agency. I was working for an agency, and this was minimum hours, minimum wage, 0 hours contract. But obviously we got quite a lot of work working for the NHS, driving these people around. But then inevitably we were subcontracted to, who was it? NSL. NSL lost a contract to Group 4, so we were out. So then, you know, basically the agency said, would you be prepared to stay on and do other sorts of driving work? And that's what I've done ever since. And it's all sorts of different things, mainly multi-drop, so you're driving stuff around, doing deliveries. It is quite varied, but it's like having 30 different jobs a year. You know, you're starting new all the time. You pitch up. Some of it is okay, some of it is awful. I must admit, there have been times when I'm thinking, you know, I'm 63 now and I'm carrying sacks of potatoes across muddy lorry parks, loading them into vans and things like that. Why am I doing this? Some of it's quite strange, really. I mean, I remember I had to drive this disability vehicle around London with this woman in a wheelchair, and I was just a driver for the day for her. I had to take her to this, or drop her and her friends. I think there were two other ladies there at restaurants, and and then drove her to a theatre and things. So that was quite interesting. I worked for Audis for quite a long time, driving new Audis around the place. I've done night shifts in London, driving up to Birmingham Airport and back overnight and things. It's all sorts of stuff. Quite a lot of it is physically quite hard. It's quite solitary work, a lot of it as well, because you're just sitting in a cab all the time, which I don't think is particularly good. So that's been my life since losing my career as a teacher. Now there have been a couple of other bits which I need to throw in. How are we doing for time? That's all right. When I first lost my job, my middle daughter Lucy, who was working for a casting agency for extras in London, and she said, "Why, you know, we'll sign you up, Dad. Why don't you give this a try?" And I have to say, I have found that tremendous fun, tremendously rewarding and informative and interesting. And I've been on all sorts of films and adverts and television things. And it's only, I mean, if I get a dozen days work in a year, it would be unusual. It's something of that sort of order, you know, if I get a few days here, a few days there. But it is, and you know, I'm not doing it for the money, obviously, because 9 times out of 10 I have to travel up to London on a train, so I get £100 a day by the time you take the cost of the train fare and stuff out. Or sometimes I've driven to Pinewood and things, and I've slept in the back of the car and things like that. It has been really, really good, very, very rewarding and enjoyable. And there was an extraordinary story. I will just tell you this story. One of the ladies Maggie used to share a job with is a Polish lady, Polish teacher, and I had worked on a French film in London, and the star was Sophie Marceau, who was an ex-Bond girl, and I was dressed as a Scotsman. I had a kilt and everything like that, which was an interesting experience, and I was playing a drunk Scotsman with a couple of other guys, and it was a wedding scene. Anyway, I won't bore you with all the details of it, but the funny thing was, I mean, I was featured quite heavily in this. I got quite a lot of screen time, as I say. And this Polish lady was in Poland. She'd gone home to visit her mum, and she was watching this French film with subtitles, and she saw me on the screen, and she went, "Oh my God, there's Steve!" And that was quite funny. That did give me quite a lot of amusement. And I was featured quite heavily in the Sherlock when he falls off the top of the building, and all sorts of things, Skyfall, Pirates of the Caribbean. It has been tremendously good fun. And the other thing I got in with, especially in the early days when I didn't have anything to do, I used to quite often go in and I used to do technology lessons for Mag and some of her colleagues down at the school this is St Mary's Primary School. Which again, it was nice to be back in the classroom. And as a result of doing that, I'd been on a couple of the school camps as well, because Maggie didn't want to do them. She said, "Oh, you do it instead." which I enjoyed. And as a result of that, the head teacher there said, would I like to be, properly put on as a teaching assistant down there, which I did. And again, I've done a few, I had about a month's work in a row down there once. It's usually helping kids that are struggling with various things. And I've done the odd day here and there and the odd week here and there. And again, that's tremendously rewarding. And the head down there, Chris Wright, a very nice chap, actually said, would you like to be we'll do supply. You can do supply if you want. But I just haven't got the confidence to do that, really. My confidence has been quite badly shaken. But it was a great boost to think that he was prepared to offer me that. So that's been my life since losing my job. I don't know if I said about, I think it was a week before so back in 2000, this would be in 2011, about a week before the very first employment tribunal hearing, I'd actually got in touch with Paul about something, Paul Caden, and he said, don't get in touch with me again. I'm getting heart palpitations and stuff like this. Please don't contact me again, which was a bit of a shock because I'd got on really well with Paul. We'd been good friends for 17 years or something like that. So that was quite a hard thing to take. And every now and then I bump into teachers and very occasionally pupils kicking around the place. They always usually quite embarrassing encounters, I'm afraid. And I did ring up Kathy quite recently, I think it was last year. I said, would you like to come out and have a chat? Because she'd retired by then. And that was quite depressing, really, because I was saying, what happened? And she said, Janet and I had a meeting with this Anne Williamson, and she said, we're going to have to get rid of him, we're going to sack him, sort of thing. And she said, Janet and I just looked at each other and went like that. And I said, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you say something? You're my head of department. So anyway, at least she had the balls to come out and talk to me, I suppose, confront me. I did actually, I think I've sent a couple of emails to Paul over the last few years to say, do you want to go out and have a drink and have a chat? But he hasn't done anything. So that's pretty depressing. And then, as I say, I've had loads of people I meet, people around the town who know I was a teacher, kids that I used to teach at the Nottage, coming up to me and saying, what are you doing now, sir? This sort of stuff. So that's as I say, that's one of the reasons. I just need to get this off my chest. I think that's about it. I might do one more. I think there's probably one or two things.